Hi guys, I'm back with chapter 9 of The Boy Who Sailed the Ocean in an Armchair today. Let's make a start, shall we? Snoop, secret mission number 2. Billy says I must write this all down before I forget it, and definitely before I eat my dinner. Although I don't think I'll ever forget what just happened to us less than 25 minutes ago. These are the notes from the mission we undertook earlier. After school. I told Billy I knew where Pearl was. Or more, that I had a sort of hunch thanks to what Mimi told me at school earlier. Billy asked what a hunch was. I said it didn't matter, but we needed to find a local paper to see the ads. The recycling bins at 4:01 p.m. I found a copy of the local newspaper, the Eden Echo. On page 13, underneath an ad for Charlie Chicken's Takeaway, there was an ad for Pearl's painting classes. The mobile number was correct. We'd found her. Billy said, "This is the best day ever!" There were 3 venues to choose from: the Scouts Hall in Honeydown Hills on Sundays, Civic Centre in Tower Point on Mondays and Tuesdays, and St Bartholomew's Church Hall in Eden on Wednesdays and Thursdays. 4:08 p.m. I looked up St Bartholomew's on Google Maps. It was only a short walk from our flat. 4:25 p.m. We mentioned the church to Dad. Dad had never heard of it. Dad asked why we were religious all of a sudden, and then he said we could try the bread wafers but not the wine. We deduced from this that Dad knew nothing about Pearl's painting classes. Planned to get out of the house to visit St Bartholomew's. We came up with nothing for ages. Then, at 4:45 p.m, Billy said something so utterly stupid it was utterly genius. Dad actually lost the power of speech for a moment when he heard it, which was a bonus. Billy said we were going to walk his pet snail, Brian. When Dad finally regained the use of his voice, he began to protest, but Billy said he'd left behind all his other friends when we moved and Brian was all he'd got. Dad gave up and said he'd get chips for dinner. Billy said, "Can Brian have a battered sausage?" Dad said he could. Outside the flat. Billy insisted on actually taking Brian for a walk. For the record, after 5 minutes, I made the sound of a ringing phone and said, "Hello, Hollywood. My brother Billy has a story that you could make into an action movie. It's about a snail. All the action takes place 5 hours after you've left the cinema." Then I told Billy I wasn't waiting around for Brian any longer. Billy pulled a face and told Brian to cover his ears so he couldn't hear what his horrible brother was saying. Whether Brian did, I'm not sure. I don't know where his ears are, or his hands for that matter. 5:13 p.m. We found St Bartholomew's and Billy stared at a small poster outside that said Pearl's painting classes starting at 4:30 p.m, all welcome. We entered the premises. Description of the premises. The hallway was narrow and had a large notice board with lots of leaflets for flower arranging and toddler groups pinned to it. There was a small woven cross high on the white wall and a basket of pink carnations. Billy poked around in those for ages. Off the hallway there were 6 wooden doors. The first led to the kitchen and the second had a sign saying it was a toilet, but it seemed to be locked because I tried the handle. The third room was a small office with no one in there, and I could hear the radio playing somewhere behind one of the other doors. The toilet door suddenly opened before we could investigate. Billy grabbed my arm. I think he was scared. He says he wasn't, but I am reporting it anyway. A man wearing a loose dressing gown walked out. Colour, beige. The dressing gown, not the man. The front of it fell open as he was trying to tie the cord around the waist. He was naked underneath. I think he gave us a smile. Billy said, "The man must be very cold." I could neither confirm nor deny this. 5:17 p.m. I peered through the glass window into the room where the man had gone. Billy stood on my toes to get a better look too. The room had 5 easels holding canvases. In my line of vision, Pearl talking to a group of people. We'd found her. We were in Pearl's world again. Mission complete. Billy made a little squeak of joy. I made a little squeak too because it felt like Billy was breaking my metatarsals, my foot bones. Billy said it was Pearl. For the record, I already knew that. Naked Man was lying on a sofa like one of those fancy Sphinx cats with lots of hairless wrinkles. Pearl walked over to Naked Man and positioned him differently to the way he'd been sitting before. I asked Billy if he wanted to go in and talk to Pearl. Billy said no. I said, well, this was our chance to say hello or goodbye or anything. Billy said no. I said, do you want to go home? Billy said yes. On the way home, Billy suddenly shouted that he'd forgotten Brian. I asked where Brian had gone, and Billy said he'd left him in the flower basket in the church hall. So I said Billy was to channel Brian and not to move a centimetre, and I'd run back and I'd rescue Brian. For the record, I said I'd be 2 minutes. Final note on secret mission number 2. Everything worked out okay with Brian. Secret final note on secret mission number 2. I told Billy that was the end of my notes about what happened earlier. I said there wasn't much else to report. I lied. What really happened afterwards? When I reached the church hall to rescue Brian, everyone was coming out, so I waited. Then Pearl and Naked Man came out. Together. Then Pearl and I hardly recognised him with his clothes on. When they glanced my way, I had to throw myself into someone's garden. I got a hedgie. My underpants caught on the hedge and they were pulled up to my armpits. I landed beside a gnome with a fishing rod. Every few seconds I checked what Pearl and Naked Man were doing. They were talking. My mobile went off. Now they were not talking, they were looking. In my direction. Quickly I turned my phone off, slipped it into the gnome's hand and crawled commando style along the garden until I was hidden behind a bin. Come here, Pearl said to the Naked Man. I watched as she leaned over the hedge and stared at the gnome. That gnome has a phone. Who would do something as crazy as that, she said. I was trying not to breathe, but then I did it anyway because I like breathing. Maybe he's got it so he can phone gnome, Naked Man replied. He opened his mouth wide as he laughed. I think I counted about 6 fillings. Pearl said she could swear the gnome got a phone call. Naked Man tugged Pearl's coat. It was the pink coat that Dad brought her from a boutique in the precinct near our old house. Naked Man kissed Pearl, a smacker right on the lips. It's not right to kiss people you work with like that. Okay, on the cheeks, yes. Maybe even both cheeks if you're French or if you can't decide which cheek you want to go with. I deduced there and then that Pearl and Naked Man are a couple and she couldn't have moved on from Dad faster if she was on a moving travelator. Pearl and Naked Man jumped in a car and zoomed away. A Fiat Panda, white, splattered with seagull droppings. I prized my mobile from the cold, hard hands of the gnome, climbed back over the hedge, entered the church premises and rummaged through the carnations. Brian was gone. The slippery little slime ball had seen his chance and raced off as fast as his rubbery suckers would carry him. I always knew Brian was putting on that slow thing. I was cursing, under my breath. I was in a church hall, after all. I was scared to tell Billy that Brian number 2 was lost. I found Brian, Billy said to me when I reached him. I said Billy hadn't even put Brian in the basket of flowers, had he? Billy said he had, but guess what? I didn't want to guess. Billy then said that he was just sitting on the wall waiting for me when he turned around and looked in the mud and saw Brian. He must have followed me, said Billy. Must have followed you, I grunted, slapping my forehead so hard I nearly knocked myself out. Note to myself, I must not slap myself again. It hurts. Billy carried Brian number 3 carefully in his hand as we walked home. He said, I didn't like the Rudy-Nudie man whose clothes fell off. I know, I said. Then Billy said all this. You don't think Pearl was his girlfriend, do you? I don't know. I'm not sure. And then he said, why is it so hard to keep a mummy after she's laid the egg? I don't know. Maybe we're just not the same as other people. People who have mummies. Billy stopped and stared up at me, looking lost. I want to be normal like them, Beckett. You are normal, Billy. Not everyone has a mummy, you know. But everyone would like one, replied Billy. Okay, and that's the end of chapter 9. Okay, I hope you're enjoying it. We'll be back with chapter 10 tomorrow. Thanks, guys. See you later.